Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Friday, and we're already almost a third of the way through the month. Here we go again, just talking about how time flies.
Yeah, I feel like that's how we start these every Friday.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find a new shtick, I think.
Yeah, but it's
Uh,
accurate.
it is. Every week I'm like, where'd the week go? So
That's
yeah,
right.
we're talking about vacations, and we're ready for the holiday vacation already
Yeah.
in the chat. So yeah, it's that time.
Yep.
I think we're all just about
We
done.
we reached that point, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, I'm debating on getting in an argument with you about the fact that you're already going to take off and not even going to be here for the next one.
Oh
So
no.
I'm going to fight you.
That's true. That's true. I know it's so I was talking to my sister. I was like, this is my last IT hour of the year.
Mhm.
Sad.
I know you're abandoning me
I know.
again.
I'm
Again.
sorry.
Yeah.
All the weddings.
Yeah, we were talking
It's
about
our other
weddings last
shtick.
week. Yeah. Yes, our other one is Alexa's always gone for a wedding because she has so many friends that are getting married.
I really don't.
It just feels like it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Only one or two a month. I mean,
Yeah,
no
that's
big
it.
deal. No big deal. Well, we're in for a treat today. We have Roger and Krishnan with us, and they are going to talk radius, and we're super happy to have them on with us because we're going to talk about certified auth and delegated auth, and they've got some really great things in store for us. But before we get into that, it's our usual community and meetups, and then a little bit about product releases, and then we will release them into the wild to talk about everything that they have in store for us. So, jumping into community, uh, there's a lot going on. I mean, it's fantastic. We have a post about how can I not see command results I'm not interested in, and there's been some interesting back and forth on that, on refining your results. And then there are a at least a half a dozen new scripts. So if you are not subscribed to the script repo, or at least checking into that regularly, you really should. There's a PowerShell on getting the last user activities from directory insights. There's something about automation on user groups, deploying and managing Cisco AnyConnect clients on Mac OS. There's a Python script on adding systems to a system group, depending on where they are. And then Chris is talking about Chris Tate, who helps with our MSPs, is talking about this new MSP legislation in the UK. So if you are an MSP and you do any work with the UK, you might want to check that out as well. And one quick reminder, we still have the Our Favorite Things Holiday Edition up. If you haven't gone on there and mentioned what you're looking forward to for the holidays, and put in a few of your favorite things, please go ahead. And the reason I'm calling that out again is we're going to take some time in next week's IT hour. And, well, excuse me, I am, because Alexa is not going to be here. And we're going to talk a little bit about those and have some fun around that. So make sure you get your stuff in there so we have some really cool things to feature. And with that, Alexa, what's going on at meetups?
Yeah. So we had another great week with our December meetups. We had the Denver meetup this week, as well as the Chicago meetup. Thanks to the 1871 Steve Larson for hosting the Chicago meetup. He's been a great partner all year with letting us use that space. So we're super grateful. And they had a great time. Pam from the JumpCloud team led that one up. And yeah, they had a few people show up and just had a good time with pizza. I debated heavily. I know Chicago folks are very sensitive about pizza. I went with deep dish, but I hope that was the right call. But yeah, no, they had a good time. And Denver did as well. I got some fun pictures that I'll share in the show notes. So yeah, we're looking forward to another good week next week. We've got Raleigh coming up on the 13th with Becky, of course, and then DC on the 14th with Tom Bridge. And then Sydney, Australia on the 15th with Adam Folb from the JumpCloud team. So we're excited to actually kick off the Sydney group next week. So yeah, excited to see how that goes. And Raleigh and DC, strong group. So excited to end the year on a high note, just get together, unwind, and yeah, celebrate a great year.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And Tom doesn't know this, but I'm going to compete with him on who can get the most people. Last time it was Raleigh, but DC's going pretty strong with registrations this time.
They
So I'm going
are.
to have to go start
True.
knocking on some doors for Raleigh to get them to come out. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. He's definitely in the lead for this one. So he doesn't even know that he's competing, but
That's true.
I'll ping him later and
Yeah.
he'll find out.
Perfect.
So kind of quiet in product release news right now. It's kind of winding down at the end of the year and everything. There may be some more news next week. If you haven't seen it though, I wanted to call out that we talked about remote assist last week with the toggle on and off, but if you haven't seen it, the other thing going on with remote assist is we have multiple monitor support. So you can select between multiple monitors during a remote assist session from the admin toolbar session options menu. And also a quick call out that people have been asking both in the community and in Slack about servers. So, non-monitored systems and things like that. And what Niraj has said is that is coming in early 2023, maybe Q1, but I'm not going to make promises on that it's going to be Q1 just in case something happens there. But that's the planned thing right now. So, just keep an eye out for that. Yeah, Stuart says, yes, multi-screen in remote is great. And any chance of talking more about the additional SSO connection standards, additional SAML and OIDC? Will, I cannot speak to that personally, but I can definitely grab someone who can come on and speak about that. Or if you want to ask in the community, I can grab someone and have them give you an in-depth answer, especially if you have some specific questions. So, ping me later and we can make sure that we get you those answers. So with that, we are going to transition over to Roger and Krishnan. Now, Roger's going to go first and he's going to talk about Radius. And Roger, can you first maybe tell everyone what you do here at JumpCloud and then hop into what you're going to talk about Radius Auth?
Absolutely. My name is Roger Quint, and I am delighted to be in this session. I'm particularly honored that this session is the last one, and I am in the last session of the year. So this is great. That means I'm going to send you away to the holidays with a lot of great thoughts and a lot of capability. So I am the product manager for Radius. I am in the authentication team, and I am super excited about being a member of JumpCloud. I think we're going to break the market. I think we're going to do tremendous things. So that's a little bit on me. I'm going to try to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Sure is.
Okay, perfect. So today we're going to talk about certificates and certificate-based authentication with Radius. I know this is a topic that has been discussed many times, and we are finally at the point where we can show our Radius capability to authenticate with certificates. So a little bit of background on certificates in general, because I think it's good to talk about what are the standards that we are meeting and where do certificates fall in the space of authentication. first of all, the JumpCloud Radio Certificate-based authentication uses a standard called X.509 digital certificates, and I refer to them as certs from here on. As a matter of fact, certs are considered in the industry the most secure authentication to positively identify a device, right? This is the ultimate way to ensure that you are talking to the right device and the device is trusted. And of course, that refers to device attestation. And device attestation at the same time is the foundation for device trust. And our entire use and management of devices relies on device trust. Okay. In authentication, there are two types of certificates that you will see in the marketplace: device certificates and user certificates. Device certificates contain device identifier information only, right? Whereas user certificates, they carry user identifier information in addition to device, of course, information, and the user is bound to that trusted device, or to the device that is associated. So with that connection, and the fact that our directory is overwhelmingly flexible and trusted by so many organizations, it creates a combination that is that's unique in the market. This particular release, the first release of certificate-based authentication, we called it Certificate-Based Authentication Bring Your Own Certificates, Radius BYOC. And this release supports user certificates only. Okay. And the reason it's called Bring Your Own Certificates is because we are enabling our customers to use existing certificate authorities that they may have. And as you know, certificates have been used for many years, and there are many organizations out there that offer certificate management services such as Global Sign and Trust and so on. It is the peak of the mountain in terms of security and standard. Therefore, there are a lot of vendors. So the idea is to allow those organizations to keep and maintain their existing certificate infrastructure and bring them into JumpCloud to leverage Radius. Right. That is the target audience and the purpose of this particular release called Radius Bring Your Own Certificates. Later on, next year, our plan is to also add certificate management from within the JumpCloud environment. That's under the so-called private key infrastructure, and we plan to offer our own PKI infrastructure in the future. But for now, at least on this release, the certificates can be brought from anywhere, and that really resonates with our Open Directory strategy. Right? We're not tying, we're not locking, and we don't intend to ever lock our customers with our certificates. They are happy that we are happy if they use their existing. So the value proposition on Radius BYOC, on Radius Certificate Authentication in general, is that it allows passwordless and frictionless user authentication for access, to access a Radius access point in this case, and in the future it can be used for other resources, right? But the focus right now is Radius, and of course Radius with certificates can enable this frictionless access to VPNs or Wi-Fi's. So this Radius BYOC, this release is part of the current JumpCloud Radius offering. In other words, there's no additional cost for users or for admins to leverage this capability. And the reason we're going in this direction is because we want our customers to gain trust and comfort with the way Radius authenticates using certificates, because whether the certificates come from a third party or whether they come from JumpCloud certificate authority when we build it in the future. The framework of authenticating certificates with Radius is exactly the same, right? The user experience accessing a Wi-Fi or VPN is the same. So, having said that, this product is currently on EA, and we have already more than a dozen customers sign up, and they're in the process of setting their environments. We also have GA is scheduled for 12/14, and everything is lined up to be in good shape there. So let's go through the journey of the two key personas, the admin and the user, right? So what does the admin have to do to get things working with Radius BYOC, in view that several of the steps to set up this framework are not offered or not managed within JumpCloud, but they have to be done outside. So the admin has essentially 7 high-level tasks to do. First, they need to create a certificate authority, and with a root certificate chain, right? That is the beginning, and the trust of the certificate starts there. And that is absolutely a component that is done outside of Radius. Of course, there are many suppliers, vendors out there that provide certificate authority. GoDaddy, Google, Amazon, so on and so forth. Right? We've comply fully to the X.509 standard. Therefore, certificate authorities are available right and left. The next thing the admin needs to do is to import that root certificate that has been created on step 1 into the Radius BIOC interface. And on the right side, you can see that we enable the upload certificate authority file, which allows the import process, right? So that's one of the things that our solution offers, and it's quite easy and very simple to do. The next step the admin needs to do is select the authentication method and select the passwordless authentication method. And as you can see, there are 2 options on authentication methods: passwordless and password. The password method is the existing, the current authentication method that we have today, meaning TOTP or push. That remains exactly the way it is at this moment. So you can choose password and go back and use Radius exactly the same way as is being used today, or you can choose passwordless, which enables the use of certificates for authentication. Okay. The fourth step that the admin needs to do is activate all users in a user group associated with that Radius AP. Pretty much the same on the user group tab as that we are all familiar with on the Radius. Nothing has changed there. The fifth step is to actually generate, or the term in the industry is mint, a user certificate with user identifier information into the certificate. Okay, that's done outside JumpCloud. And again, there are many tools out there. All these vendor providers of certificates have this function, and you can also do it self-signed certificates with the OpenSSL tools and others. The sixth step is to install the user certificate you created either on the personal or system certificate store. That is also done outside of JumpCloud, and for that, again, there are many tools and many ways to do that. Windows has a specific way to do that, as so as Mac, and there are standard tools to do that. The last step to enable access is to set up the Radius AP. and usually that would be a Wi-Fi access, or it would be a VPN. Either way, the radius IP needs to be configured to be capable, to be able to receive certificates. Right? So those are the steps that admin needs to do. And as you can see on the right hand side, once the root has been imported into Radius, it shows you details about that particular certificate authority. And of course, you can use the multi-factor interface that we had before. Right? So going back to the value of certificates, what brings to the table for users and admins for that matter, it has to do with the authentication layer. Certificates offer several authentication layers for user access, and I would argue that it is the most secure and it provides the most factors, in a frictionless manner, right? So there are 5 authentication layers that take place when authentication is when an access is requested. The first layer is the credential access, right? So the user must log in either on the JumpCloud managed device or enter the credentials on an access point, on a Radius access point, to gain access to that AP. That is known as the knowledge factor. It's something that the user knows. That's factor number 1, right? Another layer that helps in the authentication process is the validating the standing of the certificate. So the certificate must be derived from the root certificate CA that we uploaded. It cannot come from elsewhere. So that's one other layer of validation. The certificate must not be expired. So we check the date range of a certificate, and a certificate, in fact, can be issued for 1 day, 30 days, a year, or whatever the admin has decided. The certificate must also not be revoked at the time of transaction. In fact, we verify the status of the certificate with a so-called revocation list via technology called OCSP every time we do an authentication to see if it's in good standing, right? And of course, the OCSP is outside of our control, is managed by the certificate authority. The third layer of authentication has to do with compliance to JumpCloud and to JumpCloud certificates that we support. We support three user certificates, and based on the user identifier contained within the certificate. The first certificate type that we support is when the email user identifier is embedded in the subject alternative name field. The subject alternative name field, also called SAN, is one of the fields of the certificate. And in this particular example, you can see that the subject alternative name contains an email. The email is roger_the_q@yahoo.com, and that is the identifier of the user, and that user is a JumpCloud user. Right? The other certificate that we support is when the email user identifier is in the distinguished name field. The distinguished name field is another field that I'm not showing here. That's part of the X.509 standard. The third is when the username itself, the user identifier, is in the common name. So we provide those 3 levels of flexibility to the admin to identify their users. The fourth authentication layer is to validate if the user is active in access control. The user must be an active member in the JumpCloud user group associated with the Radius AP. So you see the connection there. The user has to be active. The user has to be part of that AP, and the user has to be part of that group. So, the connections and the requirements are crossfiring here. To reach the last but not least layer, having the certificate on the target device. The certificate must be located on the client device, because that particular device is the one that's going to be communicating, negotiating, and handshaking with our Radius backend. And that really is a possession factor, because you need to have possession or access to that device. And that completes the second, industry known factor. But I would argue that with the use of certificates, not only we deliver two factors, but also multiple authentication layers as a result of the certificate good standing and the certificate compliance. So it's a 2+ authentication with total frictionless interaction with the user. So without further delay, I'm going to jump into a demo. And in this demo, there are a few assumptions. All admin steps that we talked about in the last slide, or the one before the last, have already been taking place, right? In other words, certificate authority has been uploaded onto the JumpCloud interface. It has been imported, of course. The passwordless method has been selected. A user or a certain group of certain users have been already activated and connected to that access point. And of course, the certificates have been created and they have been delivered to an endpoint. In this case, my example is a Windows box having installed on the certificate store. And of course, the AP has been set. Right? Those are the things that have already taken place. And the user identifier or the user account that I'm going to use has an email of Roger_Q at yahoo.com, right? And the Radius IP is called Radius U6 in my demo. Okay, so I'm going to switch screens now so that I can go to the actual demo. And unfortunately, I cannot do a live demo, because the moment you do a live demo when you are switching connections, you cut everybody out and all of a sudden I'm demonstrating things to myself, right? So as a result of that, I will use a short video instead.
Yes, never tempt the demo gods.
Well, not only that, but the demos have already cursed me with that, because the moment you show to click from one device to the other, of course it cuts off, right? So not only the demo gods are upset, they already cursed me with that. But having said that, I have a demo that I was able to record without issues. So as I was mentioning, in this particular organization, I have a Radius called Radius.U6, and the interface, as you can see, is the same as before. We have the details, we have an authentication tab, and the groups tab, right? And the setup of the Radius is exactly the same, with the difference that the Radius U6 has to be capable of doing certificates. And majority of Wi-Fi devices today are capable, but certainly not all. So moving to the authentication tab, I have selected the authentication tab for passwordless here, and essentially we're going to select the group and the user that we want to activate, right? And I'm just scrolling so that we don't waste too much time. I already explained those details, but here we go. So once you have decided the authentication method, we are going to select a user group, and in that user group we're going to make sure that the user Roger_Q at yahoo.com is in fact active, right? So my group in this particular case is called user group A, and in user group A I'm going to make sure that my user at the bottom, Roger_Q, is active, and in fact it is. So the next step is to go to the actual access point, and you can see I'm connected to another Wi-Fi that is not the Radius Wi-Fi, right? And from there, I'm going to switch to the Radius-U6 interface, and you're going to see the interaction that the user experiences. And this is where the beauty comes in, and the seamless and frictionless experience on the user. So in just a second, you're going to see the Wi-Fi interface and selection. And so at the moment, I am connected to Wi-Fi that is not the Radius, right? The Wi-Fi is called Solene. And I'm going to switch to the Radius-U6, which is just down below. And you're going to see the experience. So now I'm a user now, right? And the user is coming in and says, this is my Radius access point. And I click connect. The handshake and all those 5 layers are taking place, and voila, you have just regained access. Now, keep in mind that in that access response, all those 5 layers have taken place, right? The 2 factors plus that I mentioned, almost transparently and seamlessly to the user. And this is really why we're pursuing this the solution. It will make adoption or usage so easy, and therefore drive adoption, right? So I'm going to go to directory insights to see that transaction, and just to review it from the admin point of view now. And you can see that the transaction has been initiated by Roger_Q at yahoo.com. It's a TLS transaction, and a TLS transaction means that it has been certificate qualified. So the protocol name is called EAP-TLS. So whenever you see a EAP-TLS, it is 100% certificates. So in this particular transaction, you can see that it succeeded. You can see the certificate authority under the certificate authority key ID and certificate issuer, and basically confirms that an authentication took place. So the next thing to try is, what does a failure look like? And a failure from the user point of view looks pretty rough, because it's managed by the endpoint, right? Whether it's Windows or Mac, the interface will basically tell the user the access denied. All right, and for security purposes, it doesn't tell you why. Your certificate is bad or your password is wrong. It does not tell you. So, so the interface when failure occurs is also quite rough and secure. Right. So we're gonna experience that now by essentially removing that user or making that user inactive. Right? So I'm going to go to my user Roger_Q and basically deactivate him. Right? Next, initially, we were connected to the Radius-U6, so I'm going to disconnect from there and connect again, right, to see the effects of that user deactivation. Okay, so I'm trying to, now I'm going to click connect, and the validations, all the 6 validations have taken place, and the message is, sorry, can't connect to this network, right? So either the user is on the wrong machine or something is not right. So the user is going to reach back out to the admin and ask, if it's a bona fide user, ask what happened, why couldn't I get in? So I'm reconnecting to Solink now so that I can actually connect to DI and see the results of this transaction. So going to DI, we should see a failure, right, preceded by a user inactivation and preceded by a success, right? As a matter of fact, you see the radius failure being the last transaction. Before that, user removed from user group, right? And before that, the radius successful login, right? So digging just a little bit deeper, we're going to examine the transaction that just took place. And first of all, we don't know who initiated, right? So it's blank. We don't know the user. We only know that it's only reporting the information about the certificate that's on that particular device. We know that it's a EAP TLS transaction by the EAP type, and we know that its success is false, so it failed, and in fact it gives you further information without revealing too much, but enough for the admin to understand the failure, right? So we just witnessed a successful login, very easily, very seamless on the user. We experienced deactivation on the admin side and a failure, right? So there are multiple ways to prevent access. One of them is by deactivating the user. But there are more with certificates. A certificate could be revoked, right? And that certificate is revoked from the certificate authority tool. And the moment it's revoked, it will also produce a failure of a similar outcome, but different reason, because we check the status of the certificate on every transaction. The certificate could have also expired in date, and that will also cause a failure. The certificate may not have the right user identifier, meaning it doesn't have the email or username. It would also produce a failure, right? So the tools that the admin has now to control is really armed with a lot of resources. I think with this experience is complete, we are providing tools for the admins to be able to set up all the steps that I mentioned that are outside of JumpCloud with guidance using single self-signed certificates with tools such as OpenSSL. We're providing exact scripts and commands that they can try, and we're also providing the actual commands themselves so that they can try and exercise the solution. That's geared towards some administrators that have not a lot of experience with certificates. And of course, for those admins that are already using a certificate authority or a certificate management tool, with those descriptions, they can easily generate the certificates that we prescribe. And I think the last step that's worth mentioning is the delivery of the certificates is also a cumbersome process done manually, but there are tools out there that do that process. And eventually, when we launch our certificate management tool, we will not only create the certificates, but we intend to deliver the certificates to the target devices as well, right? So I think with that, I'd like to pause and open for questions. And I'm not sure the format is to the questions now or wait until the end. Please guide me with that. But that's what I wanted to show you today.
Yeah, we did have some questions in the chat, and I think it's easier to answer them right now rather than later. So Sam had asked, can you use conditional access with this type of radius setup as well? And Krishnan already answered that, but I just wanted to call it out loud so that we have it on the audio, since people won't see this in chat later. And Krishnan had said not right now, Sam, but CA is on our roadmap.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
100%. I mean, there's a lot of additions that could be added, and conditional policies is one of them. Another one is even additional levels of factors, right? Such as push or TOTP on top of certificates. And I almost want to throw the question back in the sense that when an admin needs more than two factors, such as a third factor with push or TOTP, that is possible. It's not in the solution right now, but I like to understand the use case around it. So that's one addition. We're also obviously working on the PKI portion as well. So there's several improvements, and I think that the response from Krishna was right on.
Another one from Luke is, I was late to the party. Is the passwordless method only with BYOC? Is it on the roadmap for JumpCloud to handle the creation and deployment of the user certificates?
Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning, this particular version is bring your own certificates. All of those steps that you mentioned are done outside. On the future release plan for 2023, under our own certificate management, we intend to have all those functions as part of JumpCloud.
Yeah, his additional comments a little bit later, as you were showing this, was he was saying it seems interesting, but having to create, deploy, and manage certs outside of JumpCloud makes it feel like an odd feature at the moment. And for BYOD, where JumpCloud isn't present, I could see the need to manage that outside of JumpCloud perhaps, but from a high-level management perspective, this seems like a very heavy lift at the moment.
Well, keep in mind that the target of this release are those organizations that already have certificates, that are already using. So they're familiar with that, and they probably will always keep the certificates elsewhere. That's where we're going. It just so happens that this authentication method with certificates is so exciting that everybody, not just those that have experience, are currently using certificate authorities, third-party type, are interested in jumping in. And as a result of that, we created some manual steps, and we're going to try to automate that a little bit. I have great help from Tom on the Mac side for some scripts, and we're automating as much as we can to help those admins that are excited to try. But again, this was intended for those organizations that have experience certificates, and they probably will remain with their own certificate authority.
Mm-hmm. Follow-up question from Sam. Can you manage the renewal of the certificate through the JumpCloud portal?
Not on this release. The renewal has to be managed outside, as just like the creation of the certificate.
Mm-hmm. Is there any plan in the future? I'm not sure if you addressed that earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. The renewal will be part of the certificate of life management that we provide under JumpCloud.
Gotcha. And there's another comment from Luke that I want to point out because I'm not sure if we will have something to address this in the future as well. He says, I want to love Radius for Wi Fi in general, but for shared workstations, having the machine not connected to a Wi Fi network until a user has logged in has been a painful experience for remote management and push MFA. And I can see where that would be a problem if it's not connected and you're trying to access it remotely to do, push updates and things like that. If it's not connected, then you're going to struggle. Are we addressing that? Planning to address it? Are there ways around it?
Yeah, I think that starting point is important, and that's one of the reasons why we offer that option to use either password or passwordless, so that you can facilitate that transition. So that in that manner, the first time around, the user can use their existing credentials and connect, right? And after that, certificates get activated.
Great, thank you. I think that was all the questions for now. So we should make sure we have some time for Krishnan to do his part.
Yeah, and thank you very much. I have to say I'm really happy and lucky to have Krishnan addressing another element of the radius. Krishnan, to you, please.
Thank you, Roger. I'm not going to have as awesome slide as Roger, but I will still be able to share something. Give me a minute. I hope everyone can see my screen. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Krishnan Ramachandran. I am a product manager at JumpCloud. I am responsible for the authenticator, meaning JumpCloud Protect, FIDO2 key integration, and also Radius authentication with third-party IDPs. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. You might have heard about the Radius delegated authentication. I'll kind of talk about what it means. Let me kind of start with the problem statement, right? So during the COVID, a lot of organization, they went remote and they started adding directory to their IT environment. And a lot of companies, they used IDPs other than JumpCloud, say Azure AD or Okta, etc. And one of the things, when you kind of use Azure AD, Azure AD doesn't do a good job supporting Radius. So, of course, AD you can, if you want to kind of, set up a Radius and enable Wi-Fi or VPN, you need to kind of do an on-prem Radius, and then and also on top of that, you need to kind of build an identity and access management layer so that you can kind of secure the access. So that means there is a setup, integration, and maintenance effort on that one. So that's where kind of JumpCloud comes in, right? So now admins are kind of looking for a cloud radius, which JumpCloud nicely provides, where you can kind of set up a radius server within minutes instead of weeks. But now there is a problem. So which is that before this radius authentication using Azure Ready credential feature, user needs to kind of create a password within JumpCloud. So that is a kind of a friction, and that kind of prevented from many admins who already uses Azure AD as their IDP, be able to kind of leverage JumpCloud's cloud radius. So we kind of understood the pain point, and we decided to kind of use our open directory platform to kind of hey, now the admins can bring the identity from anywhere. They can provision any identity from any other IDPs, and also they can leverage the other IDP credential in order to use some of the JumpCloud services. So that we decided to kind of start with cloud radius. So that's what I'm going to kind of talk about. So with this feature now, an IT admin on org, which is using Azure Active Directory as their IDP, they'll be able to kind of create a cloud radius server within JumpCloud. and have their user connect to the Radius server using the Azure AD credentials and without needing to kind of create a password within JumpCloud. So that's a kind of the product and the feature, and it's pretty awesome. Why it is? Now the admins can kind of create a Radius server within minutes instead of weeks. They don't have to do any additional maintenance. The user doesn't have to kind of create passwords within JumpCloud. And if the admin has created very strong password policy, within Azure AD, they can leverage that and kind of create a secure access to their resources. On top of that, we also enable one of the widely asked is that hey, previously the user always need to use the user ID in order to use to access Wi-Fi or VPN. Now they can also use an email address and the password to kind of access the Radius resources, right? So that's another value add which we kind of added to JumpCloud, both for Azure AD as well as for Radius with JumpCloud credentials, right? So that's the kind of the nutshell, problem statement in kind of the nutshell, right? I'll kind of go over the steps on how you kind of go up this do the setup. So let me kind of go to the screen. So now this is my Azure AD test tenant. I have kind of created few users already here. And what I need to kind of do the first step, right? And now I'll kind of come to JumpCloud. All I need to do is create a Radius server. You can kind of do that in minutes. Now, if you go to the authentication tab, now you have an option to kind of select Azure AD as an IDP, right? Of course, it kind of comes with some restrictions where MFA cannot be supported with if you choose Azure AD as the IDP. Again, it's not a JumpCloud restriction. It's more of a technology limitation from Azure AD. And once you kind of create that, I already have a Radius server created here. So all I need to do is assign some users, right? And also provide permission to the Radius user group to kind of access this Radius server. So now, not before that, I need to kind of import the users from Azure AD, right? So JumpCloud kind of provides a Microsoft Scrim server, which they can kind of admins can leverage and do an auto import instead of manually creating the users in JumpCloud. And it takes about a few minutes. We have all the things that is already kind of set up. All I need to do is that you go to the enterprise and application in Azure AD, and you kind of create a new application. So I already have my application created here, right? So, and once you kind of create and kind of assign users to this this enterprise application, and it will automatically start importing into JumpCloud. So I already assigned users to this enterprise application. I'll come to JumpCloud and I'll show you here. You can kind of see few users already kind of imported here. Another thing you can always one important note catch here is you can see the password status is kind of pending, which means that users are not required to create a JumpCloud password, which you already kind of I mentioned before. So once you kind of do that, right? Then you can go back once the user is imported, you can go back and assign the user to the user groups and allow and provide this user group permission to access this specific Radius server here. That's what I have done here, right? With that, now your Radius server creation within JumpCloud and the user import from Azure AD is completed. Now, once I kind of complete that, now I need to go and kind of create a Radius server, set up my access point, which is kind of outside the scope of this specific demo here. Once I kind of created that, now and after the next step is to kind of do a client configuration, right? I'm going to kind of the steps kind of varies with say a Mac OS versus a Windows. I'm going to kind of quickly show a Mac OS demo here. So we have provided nice tools shortcuts which the admins can leverage in order to kind of create a Wi-Fi profile on Mac device. So they can kind of go to our KB and download that existing mobile config. They need to kind of just provide the access point. D-Link is my access point name, and they need to just download. I mean, they need to just import their Wi-Fi enterprise certificate into this profile. Once they're completed, they just need to kind of deploy it on the Mac device. And also, if you use any other MDM other than JumpCloud, you can kind of bundle this profile with this MDM, and you can do an auto deploy as well. I complete the installation. So my client setup is kind of done now. Now I'm going to go and connect. Again, Radius demo is one of the boring demos in general. There is not a voila point. So just bear with me. So this is my Microsoft user ID, and I'm going to use my Microsoft credential. Of course, I can't actually show that to you, but yeah. So now I'm kind of connected to my access point, which is kind of configured to use the Azure AD credentials, right? And not only that, we also surface this specific this radius information within our directory insights. Of course, and if you have kind of subscribed to that, you'll be also be able to see all your radius authentication, both on JumpCloud as well as on the Azure Radius side. In order to kind of quick start, right? Again, Radius is not for someone with a weaker heart, right? It takes a few steps, and if you kind of miss some of the steps, you might it will can really trouble you and frustrate you. We have put together a nice quick start guide, which can kind of help you get started, and then that will help you just which outlines the step which you need to nicely follow step by step. And if you just follow that the steps that's outlined, I can assure you that you can get a Radius setup running with Azure AD within the matter of minutes. So yeah, that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have. And one thing I want to kind of add that as well, again, with the open directory, we're not going to kind of stop here. In the future, definitely we are looking to kind of add Radius authentication with say Google credentials or Okta credential. So really we want to kind of promote our open directory initiative, and we want to kind of accept identity from anywhere and enable services for IT admins to make their life easier.
Perfect. And you said that there was a guide for that. So if you want to send that to me or Alexa, we will make sure that we post that in the show notes so that we can share that out.
Okay, sure. I can put that in the chat as well.
Yeah.
If anyone is interested. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you. I didn't see any questions, but if anyone has any, they can drop that in the chat. The only other thing we have, don't really have a ton of time, but there were some interesting news bits that we won't spend a lot of time on. But in case you hadn't seen it, Google Chrome gets memory and power saving modes coming soon. My response is yes, please. I think you all know my Chrome abuse of having 15 windows and anywhere from 10 to 75 tabs in each. But the browser is, I guess, with the latest release, which I keep getting notices that my browser is going to restart to install those updates. They're going to introduce 2 new performance settings, memory saver and energy saver. When they're used, Google said Chrome will consume up to 30% less memory and extend a device's battery when it's running low. So yay, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Let's see what else was worth looking at. Oh, here was something interesting. Researchers accidentally crash botnet used to launch DDoS and crypto mining campaigns. This was via Tripwire. Researchers were investigating a newly discovered botnet and admitted that they accidentally broke it in November, security experts at Akamai described a Golang-based botnet that they had discovered hijacking PCs via SSH and weak credentials. And they were using those to launch distributed denial of service attacks and mine cryptocurrency. The botnet, which researchers called KMSD bot, attacked Windows and Linux devices and was targeting technology companies, gaming firms, and luxury car manufacturers, of all things. So they described how the team's deeper examination of the botnet actually resulted in its demise. I mean, this is just too great. In an attempt to better understand the bot's functionality, they sent commands to the bot in a controlled environment with unexpected results. They said, interestingly, after one single improperly formatted command, the bot stopped sending commands. Naturally, we began an investigation. It's not every day you come across a botnet that the threat actors themselves crash their own handiwork. Ha, delicious, delicious. Let's see here. Notes, Chrome using less RAM. RAM manufacturers have entered the chat. Yes, Rob, maybe so. I would love to not have Chrome be such a hog, though. And Sam says that's why I have 128 gigs of RAM. Yeah, I think on my last computer, I almost maxed it out. I'd have to look and see on my personal Mac how much I got last time, but I think I either did 64 or 128 as well. I mean, I went nuts because I'm like, I don't want to buy another one for several years, so I'm just gonna do what I can to bump it up. And with that, we are actually out of time. I had a few other fun ones, but maybe I'll save those for next week around some AI interesting stuff that's going on in the art world and the chatbot world. It's been blowing up the news this week. Some definite interesting conversations around that. I hope y'all have a great weekend. Alexa, I'm sorry you won't be here next week. I'm not going to give you a hard time. I'm just going to say I hope you enjoy the wedding and have a happy holiday after that. But don't forget, everyone, join in on our favorite things, because we're going to talk about that next week and see what kind of cool gadgets and fun things people are looking at. And maybe you'll get some additional gift ideas for the holidays. So with that, have a great weekend, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye,
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Bye.